Bonjour, my belles and bets, and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Sheena Harrell, and I'm the author of 13 books. My latest one comes out on April 22nd. It's called Midnight Radio. And today I have a list here of some of the books that I want to write but have not been able to yet. And this is actually part one of two. I'm going to do another video in a couple of weeks that is all of the books that I have started and left unfinished for whatever reason. And then you can go to my community tab and vote on the one that you think I should do next. But that's next week. This week we're talking about imaginary projects and stuff that I haven't even started yet. It's the writing equivalent of getting the pattern, winding the yarn, maybe even casting on and knitting a couple rows, and then leaving the project bag under the bed. So here are the top 10 books that I would like to write one day in no particular order. So I do have all of my notes over here. If you see me looking off to the side, this is just so I have my list with me, and some of these are really old ideas, so I had to make notes to remind myself what they were about. So project number one, I would like to write a biography of Sarah Josepha Hale. I read a lot of nonfiction, and I would love to write nonfiction at some point. And I fell down a rabbit hole during the pandemic where I was working on a magazine article, and it kind of snowballed from there. And I started researching Godey's Ladies Book, which was a women's magazine in the 1800s. And it was started by a man, but edited by a woman who eventually just took it over. And it had a huge impact on 19th century society and publishing in America. And the woman behind the magazine, Sarah Josepha Hale, was widowed in her 20s and had to find a way to take care of her children at a time when women did not work. And if they did work, it was seen as being very low class. So they worked for starvation wages, basically. And at the same time, she had small children that she couldn't leave unattended. She had no one to leave them with, and no one who could take care of them for her. So she was a really fascinating woman. She was very far from perfect. But I would like to share more about what she did, because I think that she doesn't get enough credit for some of this, but I also don't want to do like a sugar-coated biography of her. And the reason I've never been able to really work on this is because I started it in the pandemic, and it requires a research trip to the East Coast to do some of that first-person research and look up some documents that are in storage there, which I have not been able to do, unfortunately. So that's project number one. Project number two, I really want to write a World War II story. I listen to a lot of World War II documentaries when I'm trying to sleep, just because that seems to be the most documented period in history. And I am fascinated by it, but I'm more fascinated by the home front stories. I'm less interested in the battles and the soldiers and that sort of thing, and more how things changed back home, how people kept going. And this is the same for World War I, World War II, the Civil War, the Revolutionary War. I'm more interested in especially the women's stories and the stories of what was going on off of the battlefield. So I would like to write a story that takes place during this time period. And one thing that's always fascinated and actually baffled me is how the greatest generation, especially in London during the Blitz, just kept going. And as somebody who has an anxiety disorder, someone who is sensitive to things like noise and being around people and crowded spaces, being able to deal with that day after day after day is just, it's baffling to me. And I want to write a character who has an anxiety disorder and is living through the London Blitz and doesn't have those treatment resources that we do today. They didn't really have medication. Any resources they did have, such as beds in sanitariums and the medical expertise that they had at the time, was all being allocated to soldiers. It wasn't going towards civilians. So I want to explore that, and because it's me, there will of course be some kind of murder mystery and probably like a ghost or something involved. But that's a story that I do want to write at some point. It's just that I have way too many story ideas and not enough time. Graham. Graham is not interested in anything that I write. Project number 3. I want to write a story set in the Italian Renaissance, specifically in the 1530s to 1560s. When I was in Florence and studying for my post-bachelor certificate, I got really into studying the Medici, specifically Cosimo I and his wife Eleonora. And I want to write a story that takes place at their court. And I have like a vague idea of what I want it to be about. Like, I know who the main character is. I know what her personal struggle is. But the problem is that the politics at that time period were so complex and convoluted. And there's just like all these intrigues upon intrigues upon intrigues. And that is not a thing I'm good at writing. I'm a very straightforward, logical person. So these like convoluted backdoor plots just totally baffle me. I don't know how people come up with this stuff. So I haven't started working on that one. But I know who the main character is. I know who her love interest is. I know what her personal challenge is. It's just trying to figure out what's going on in the world around her and in her social circle. That is just, I'm not there yet. Okay. Project number 4 is one that I have an opening scene for, and the working title is called Underhill. And it is a modern King Arthur retelling. I love puns. You may have noticed that if you've been around here for a little while. I know a lot of people don't, but I am the dad joke friend. And this story started as a pun. It actually started as something else, and then it became a pun. But it starts with this young woman who's having a rough day, and she gets into a car accident on a country road when this man in armor just steps out in front of her car. And she gets thrown from the vehicle, and instead of helping her, he pulls a sword out of her chest because her last name is Stone. So it's the story of the sword and the stone, except she is the keeper of the sword. And I don't have a plot for it. I just have that opening scene, but I think that it would make a really funny, offbeat type of story. And I would love to work on it some more. Okay. Project number 5 is actually meant to be one of, not really a series of novels, but a collection of novels. Back in 2017, I published All for One, which is a gender-bent steampunk retelling of Three Musketeers. And that was always intended to be the first of a group of stories where I gender bent and just made fun retellings of classic historical novels. And one of my favorite historical stories is Robin Hood. So I have always wanted to go back to that one, and I've tried writing it several times, but I've never been able to get the time period to mesh. I've tried writing it in the Middle Ages, where it's originally set. I've tried moving it up to the 1800s. I've tried moving it to the 1700s. I even tried moving it up to like the 1940s, and just nothing has really been working for me on that. So that project is on hold indefinitely until I can figure out how to fix it. Project number 6, this is one of my more recent ideas. And this is called The Woman Scorned. And it's basically post-colonial women become pirates. That's it. That's the story. It's set in the 1780s, and it's basically a bunch of Abigail Adams' friends who decide that they are sick of being second-class citizens when they were promised more in this new free country. So they steal a boat and become pirates. That's the premise. Project number 7 is a knitting/crochet pattern book. I have several different ideas for this, different collections that I've wanted to work up over the years, but it has never come together. Number one, knitting the samples just takes a really long time. And also partially, I don't like writing garment patterns. I like making garments, but I don't like writing the patterns down just because I'm not good at pattern grading. I really need a good tech editor, which I have not found one. I haven't been able to afford one. So I could do like a collection of accessories, but that feels kind of anticlimactic. Accessory books generally don't sell very well. You have to have garments or a technique to back you up, because that's typically what crafters are looking for. So that's one where, when I am not going from one financial crisis to another constantly, hopefully I'll be able to work on that a little bit more once I have a dedicated tech editor. Project number 8, this one has a working title of Roanoke, and this is, it's set in the area of the vanished colony in, I think it's Virginia. Roanoke. There was a colony there, it was a settlement, and they had really hard times. Somebody went back to England to get help, returned, and the entire colony was gone. And nobody knows what happened to it. So this is the story about a high school age girl who, her parents have just divorced. She gets stuck in the middle of nowhere working on this archaeological dig with her dad. And they're trying to find a lost treasure in the area. But the treasure has a curse on it, and the curse is real. So it's bringing in a lot of like American history and also some fantasy elements. And this is another one where I have an opening scene, but it's never really gone any further than that. I haven't developed a real plot for it or anything. And project number 9, this one is codenamed Gamer Girls. I've talked about it on Twitter before. This is another YA project. It's a dual perspective, and it's about 2 teenage girls who meet while playing a mobile game that's kind of like Pokemon Go, except it's more like Robin Hood inspired. So instead of going to gyms, you would battle castles. And instead of like capturing Pokemon, you would do things like fight knights or things like that around the game world. And it's like an AR thing. There's a social media aspect to it. There's internet aspect to it. And there's also them meeting in real life. And I really want to write this one. It's got like skateboarding and music and fashion and all the stuff that I loved as a teenager in it. But in my head, I picture one of the girls as being Asian. And obviously I am not. So I don't want to be seen as doing like cultural appropriation or anything like that. I want to write the most authentic story possible. And I'm just not sure how to approach that. If I should just forget about the idea, if I should make both characters white, which doesn't feel right, or if I need to bring in like a sensitivity reader or a co-writer, or what I should be doing with this. And the last book I don't really have a plot or anything for, but project number 10 I've codenamed Once Upon a Time. And it is basically just the daughter of a long line of evil witches, wants to be evil but ends up being good. Or does she? And that's really all I've got on that one. So those are 10 books that I want to write but have not been able to really get a good start on for whatever reason. Next week I will walk you through some of my abandoned projects, and you can vote over on the community tab on which one you think that I should pick up and work on next. So until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and I hope that you have something cute and fluffy to cuddle with. Ciao!